That's what scared a lot of our viewers. They said, "Are you crazy buying a sight unseen Cirrus from 1,000 miles away?" Hello, my name is Jeff,
My name's Christian.
and we are brothers out here in beautiful, sunny Arizona. Some of your viewers may know us from our YouTube channel, JR Garage, where we love to feature all of our supercar and upgrades and restorations and ownership experiences. But as of late, we've gotten a lot into aviation, and that's some of the stories we're going to be sharing here today.
That's right, we've built our channel, JR Aviation, mostly off of flying with friends, and recently after a few plane ownership experiences.
Yeah, so our first ownership experience came in the way of a Cirrus SR20, which we're going to outline here today with you. But that one had some ups and downs, some unexpected turns came up during that ownership, but I feel like it's a good story to share, and we can maybe share some insights that we learned into buying our first plane. And it all really starts with like the hunt for the first plane. And this was really Christian was the big proponent for getting a plane.
Yeah, that's right. And going even way back, first couple trips to Oshkosh, and then looking on eBay for planes. I remember some Mooney M20J, I think it was, and it seemed like a good deal, whatever, but nothing came of that one.
Yeah, so we were on the hunt for the perfect plane, right? So like you got to find something that works for your mission. And part of our mission is being very tall people fitting in the plane. That's like number one problem for us, is finding something that we can fit into. I'm like 6'6", he's like 6'4". So we quickly realized that the Mooney, when we sat in the first one, like it wasn't gonna work. So Christian always liked the Moonies, but that kind of got ruled off. And then what was the next plane? I was open to like a nice 172 or something like that, like great training airplane. And then Christian one day got down the Cirrus rabbit hole.
Yeah, I've been working on cars for quite a few years now, and older cars I have found tend to require more maintenance than some of our newer cars. And so I figured as new of a plane as we could afford would be a nice treat. And normally it would be way out of price point for anybody and for us too. But somehow the entry-level Cirrus SR20 came up for a seemingly comparable price that we were budgeting for something a lot older.
And it checked off a lot of our boxes, including cabin dimensions. You're talking class-leading sizes, right, Christian? Like the width, do we know them off the top of our head? Or 48 inches, right? Isn't that the width?
It's pretty much the most that I've seen, and also the height, and even the rear seats are pretty spacious.
Like I was back there on our first flight for 5 hours, and I tell you, it was a really nice experience. So great legroom back there. It's tons of shoulder width. This isn't some Cessna 150 where you're like crouched in on top of each other. That was a big pro for us. The fuel burn being very reasonable for the speeds you're getting. It's not a slow plane, 140-ish plus knots. That was very attractive. And then the price point was like the thing that sealed it in. Like, why drop 50, 60 grand on even more at that point on like a 172 when you can get a far newer, far better plane in a lot of ways for not that much more.
We knew it was going to be a big risk though, and this wasn't a walk into the plane dealer and they've already done all of your paperwork and inspections for you and everything. So it was a big gamble. It was a private sale, and it was also out there on the market for anybody else to scoop up. So I was wondering, why hadn't it been scooped up yet? What do I not know? But we did some more homework, and we did actually post it on the forums. Even though we thought that this was a super great deal, why wouldn't somebody else just take our little lead? But got some good information there, and then we were ready to take the next step and start talking some numbers with the guy, and we did some pretty hardcore negotiating to get the price even better for a sight unseen purchase.
Right. Yeah, that's what scared a lot of our viewers. They said, "Are you crazy buying a sight unseen Cirrus from 1,000 miles away from home?" But the deal was simply too good to pass up. We did our research. We did our digging. We talked to the members on the forums. The Cirrus forums are great. They provided so much information, so many helpful guys out there wanting to help us on our journey of buying our first plane. And with this information we were armed with, it seemed like this was a pretty solid deal.
But there were definitely still some unknowns, so before sending off the money, we made sure to drive out there, and we rendezvoused with our friend Owen very last minute to get him out there to have an actual pilot look over it with us, and then ultimately fly it home when we did settle on a number. Actually, an even lower number after I went through the logs and realized there's a little discrepancy of when the parachute was replaced, and lost a couple years on that, but the cost was rolled into the price. So we were officially plane owners.
Yeah, we literally woke up at like 7 a.m. because Owen's like, let's do this all in one day. So we're talking Louisiana all the way to Arizona. That's like, I think it was like 1,050 miles or something. And Owen's like, let's do it all today. So we load up in the plane for the first time. Our excitement is off the charts. And we're like, this is going to be a great flight, no problems whatsoever. And what do you know, 2 minutes after taking off, Christian, did we run into a little issue?
Oh yeah, so
Forgot about that.
of course, a thorough pre-flight, but something that we weren't just familiar with as Cirrus owners is the Generation 1 and the cowling, the oil door just never looks like it's perfectly sealed tightly and shut. And so when we departed, there was just a little bit of like vibrating happening to that door. And we were wondering, did we really not seal it right? We did it like twice. And so we announced to the tower that we were turning around, and boy, did the tower make a big deal of it.
Oh my goodness, yeah. A simple little oil door that Owen, just out of precaution, wanted to land just to make sure it was closed before going 5 hours to Texas. They're like, oh my gosh, is this an emergency? How many souls are on board? Like, what's your fuel level? Do you need support? And we're like, no, like it's okay. Like, we don't need support. We're just gonna quickly get out and check it. And
They're like, okay, we're rolling the trucks.
they're like, we're still gonna send the trucks. So like, I'm like, oh my gosh. I look down, the fire truck doors are opening at the thing, and trucks are coming out, and I'm like, geez, we're 1 hour into airplane ownership, and we have emergency trucks meeting us on the ground.
So we figured that they just hadn't had an exercise in a while, and it was a good opportunity for them. So we were all for it, I guess.
Once they saw we landed successfully, they're like, okay, and we confirmed that we're good. Then they went back in. But that was just like a crazy start to airplane ownership. But it was supposed to be like that. The door was just fine. It just sat a little bit high. Oh well, better be safe than sorry. So we continued. We took back off to Winkler County, Texas, which was our first fuel stop. That was another point of just a funny moment because, boy, filling up a plane for the first time full of fuel, that is expensive. That's a whole new expense that we had never experienced before.
And Owen used ForeFlight to find the cheapest fuel that we could find in the middle of nowhere, oil-rich Texas. So
But
that was wild. One more note about that first leg. We needed an IFR clearance to get out of there because some weather came down. And so I recall the first time just heading into the clouds straight ahead of you. Of course, plenty of commercial flights, you're looking out the window or whatever. That was so surreal because that was just maybe our 5th time flying general aviation.
Yeah, that was so new. I remember that as well, just looking out and just seeing nothing. Complete IMC, but good thing we were in good hands with Owen. Walking the park for him, jotting everything down on his iPad, all the readbacks, and plugging everything into the 430, and the well-equipped Cirrus SR20, which was 18 years old at this point, it handled that no problem. It can do all sorts of, IFR work and shoot approaches and just all sorts of cool stuff. So a base-equipped Cirrus can get a lot done. So that's one of the big reasons we love that plane.
We were fortunate for that, doing a lot of the hard work, and Owen doing the hard work, but it was a fantastic learning opportunity. We had been watching YouTube videos religiously before that point, and so we were able to absorb it all and catch everything as it's going by. Just being a little more familiar with what to expect for that flight was able to make learning during the flight, I think, a lot easier.
Yeah, it was a great, enjoyable experience, especially with autopilot. We had GPSS on board. I guess, was that part of the plane's equipment, or did somebody add that aftermarket?
That was added aftermarket. But,
so nicely equipped. We were lucky to have that, so we popped that on, and it was just smooth sailing. We were eating some lunch and just enjoying our new plane. It was just so surreal. So then, like I said, we landed in Texas, got some fuel, and then continued on to Arizona, and we made that leg pretty quick time. It wasn't that bad at all to fly cross country, and we made it here safe and sound. And then after leaving Texas, we were going to stop again in somewhere in New Mexico or East Arizona to get some more fuel. But we noticed the endurance of the SR20 sipping so little fuel, like 8 point something gallons per hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so economical, and you're going like 140 whatever knots. I said, Owen's like, guys, we can make this in one shot. So from Winkler County, Texas, we made it here nonstop, and it was a great test without even pushing it too hard to see just how far this can go on one tank.
And that was helpful because it was starting to get pretty dark. In fact, it was all the way, it was beyond dusk when we got back. But that was also, I think, first time flying at night, maybe. At least for me, I remember it as another notable experience for this first
great
journey home.
I have so many pictures. It was amazing going over to Texas and New Mexico, and we finally made it here safe and sound. And once again, we were on cloud nine. We thought everything was going great, and that we just got a steal of a deal on a plane, and that we are going to do so well on this thing until, let's see, how quickly after that. The next flight, we start to realize, one of these cylinders is running a little hot. What could it be?
We figured it was worth a stop at the shop because we also noted a couple squawks along the way, just little minor things, but combine it all into one shop visit. And also the fact that we're not pilots, and Owen, who flew us, was back in California. And so we needed to push this thing to some shop on the field.
Yeah,
and
they literally tugged it over to the Cirrus certified shop here.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, maybe it's going to be something minor, like no big deal. So they start looking into it, and they take off the number 5 cylinder, whichever one it was that was running hot. Again, it was like approaching the red on the temperatures, completely out of line with the others. So something was wrong. So we took it in, and they said, oh, we got to remove the cylinder to take a look at it. And we're like, okay, sure. And then they removed the cylinder, and then it was slightly out of spec tolerance for that cylinder. So they're like, we need to put on a new cylinder. That's probably why it was running hot, and it's going to be, actually, the quote was ridiculous. For a new cylinder, they wanted like $13,000 or something, or over 10 grand.
So we figured with the time on the engine being 1650, we were hoping for a couple hundred hours of training out of it. But at that point, I mean, we were most of the way toward a new engine. But then we had a follower, subscriber reach out and say, oh, I can do that for only a few grand. So that was awesome. He came out mobily with all the tools he needed to knock out the job. And unfortunately, upon further investigation, the cam had a little bit too much wear on it, cam spalling. Apparently it was a known issue, and so unfortunately that really sealed our fate to a new engine.
What is that? 10 hours after buying this plane, we are faced with a bill to replace the engine. That one hurt. And we outlined this whole saga on our aviation channel. So obviously these videos got a lot of views because these 2 young kids who are in way over their head bought a plane sight unseen, and now they have a $50,000 engine bill. I told you so. Well, again, we were accounting for that worst case. We knew it was approaching TBO, and that the IO360s aren't the most reliable engine to make it to TBO or past TBO.
The Continental 360.
Yeah, the Continental 360 is just not the best motor. So we knew at some point we would be in for an engine replacement. It just came a lot earlier than we were expecting. Yep. So we were faced with this huge bill, and Christian ended up finding a great mechanic here locally that was like, hey, I'll grab the motor, I'll rebuild it all, and I'll get it done for actually quite a bit less and probably quicker than going the factory manufactured route. So we said, let's do it.
But then we found out that the case was cracked, and there's another $5,000 something.
Isn't that more? It's like $8,000. It needed a new case as well because they updated the case because the old one's cracked. So they remade them stronger. So we just bit the bullet and bought the more expensive case to get a good rebuild. And yeah, it just became a lot of money. But and it took a long time because then COVID struck and nobody could get parts and things were delayed and nobody was working to be able to put, it just was a whole mess. But now with the plane dialed in, perfectly sorted, runs great, new motor, everything. Christian, now's the time we can really start enjoying the plane and working toward our pilot's license, right?
No. Now's the time that you sell it, do everything perfect for the next person to enjoy. It seems like it's always how it goes. And then also we were tipped off when we kept getting postcards in our mailbox saying, do you want to sell your SR20? I guess with the registration, anybody can just send you a letter. and we got a number of those.
Right. So while the plane was down getting an engine, the market exploded, as we all know, with the used plane market. Just the prices went insane to the point where they're like stepping close to like SR22 numbers, and we're like, geez, if we can get this much money for it, like, why not maybe sell it and look for the next deal? And ultimately, we found so many buyers wanting to buy the plane, and one gave us an offer that we couldn't refuse, and it just made sense to sell the plane and look for the next deal. And boy, did we have a couple deals lined up. 2 more planes on the way that we were able to purchase.
In fact, the plane nearly doubled in value and became our most expensive asset. It was worth too much for us to hold on to. It was coming on the next year. Maybe insurance would need to be renewed. Who knows if that would go up. And it was just more plane than we ever thought we'd have.
Hey gang, here from Hangar Talk. Thank you so much for plugging into the channel, liking, subscribing. We appreciate all you continuous subscribers, and we can't wait to see you on the next one.